Office of Strategic Communications at the University of California, Davis. Our office hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. If you're a member of the news media and a deadline, please contact James Nash at 530-219-0943. Again, his phone number is 530-219-0943. Otherwise, please leave your name, phone number, and a brief message at the tone. Someone will return your call as soon as possible. Thank you. Record your message at the tone. When you are finished, hang up or press pound for more options.
I'm reaching out to this number as being part of a group who receive and deal with media communications for UC Davis. And I just wanted to say that I think we're dealing with a brown shirt. I think that if we do not deal with this kind of toxicity as a cry for help, at best, if we don't deal with this kind of shrieking, lynch mob, brain syndrome, stoking behavior as at best a cry for help, then we're failing one another. If we don't treat that kind of shrieking, scapegoating, frankly, Nazi tone and othering, demonization, if we don't treat that as a cry for help, we are taking it and sanctioning it, and we're submitting to it. Beyond what free speech dictates one might say in terms of language, I think you need to look at intent. And the intent of getting in someone's face in public and working to, in public, ridicule and deal with someone in a way that shows they've lost or don't care about the mechanisms that exist to deal with serious concerns about protocols in medicine or government or anything. And we need to deal with those things without creating a sense of an enemy or a sense that at any moment Beth, Bourne might point and say, them, they did it. Take out their throats. That's what we're looking at here. I don't know why UC Davis would frankly employ a Nazi. Moms with Liberty, Moms for Liberty, you can grab whatever words you want. But just like the Ku Klux Klan chose America first, and just like the Ku Klux Klan chose Make America Great Again, and just like Donald Trump chose Make America Great Again, and America First, and Stephen Miller chose America First. She chose.
Press pound or hang up to play it. 3 to re-record it. 4 to add to it. 5 to discard it. 6. Record your message at the tone, then press pound.
My point is, we're looking at someone who is in crisis, and whether or not they recognize it, they are a danger to themselves and to others. And this is beyond free speech if this is fomenting and normalizing toxicity against a group of people who are currently undergoing genocide in terms of the trans community. And Beth Bourne should be in care. She should be dealing with someone who can help her deal with her intolerance. because we can be tolerant of anything but intolerance, and sowing that intolerance and using it as a bludgeon and as a part of Moms for Liberty. I mean, this is strike 4. The rights that have been stripped from women in this country are making a festival of patriarchal terrorism possible. And Beth Bourne knows it. And Project 2025 is coming unless we stop it peacefully and help someone like Beth Bourne when she shrieks
You are
these...
approaching the maximum length for a recording. Finish your recording. Record your message at the tone, then press pound.
As she shrieks these dehumanizing vitriol particles, we need to recognize that it's a cry for help and treat it as such, or we will all need help. We need to tell predators no. And I hope that she does get help.
You have reached the maximum length for a recording. To send this message, press pound or hang up. To play it, 3. To re-record it, 4. To add...
I'm reaching out to this number as being part of a group who received and deal with media communications for use of data. And I just wanted to say that I think we're dealing with a Brownshirt. I think that if we do not deal with this kind of toxicity as a cry for help, at best, if we don't deal with this kind of shrieking, lynch mob, brain syndrome, stoking behavior as at best a cry for help, then we're failing one another. If we don't treat that kind of shrieking, scapegoating, frankly, Nazi tone and othering demonization, if we don't treat that as a cry for help, we are taking it and sanctioning it, and we're submitting to it. Beyond what free speech dictates one might say in terms of language, I think you need to look at intent.
Intent.
The intent of getting in someone's face in public.
In public.
And working to, in public.
In public.
Ridicule. And deal with someone in a way that shows they've lost or don't care about the mechanisms that exist. Deal with serious concerns about protocols in medicine or government or anything. And we need to deal with those things without creating a sense of an enemy or a sense that at any moment at any moment Beth Bourne might point and say, Beth, David, take out their clothes. That's what we're looking at here. I don't know why Davis, when you see Davis, would frankly employ a Nazi. Moms for Liberty. You can grab whatever words you want, but just like the Ku Klux Klan chose America first, and just like the Ku Klux Klan chose Make America Great Again, and just like Donald Trump chose Make America Great Again, and America first, and Stephen Miller chose America. My point is, we're looking at someone who is in crisis, and whether or not they recognize that they're a danger to others.
A danger to themselves and others.
Beyond the speech, if this is fomenting and normalizing toxicity against even the people who are currently undergoing genocide in terms of the trans community. And Beth Bourne could be in care, be dealing with someone and help her deal with her intolerance. Because you can be tolerant of anything, of intolerance, and showing that and using it as a coercion and be part of Moms for Liberty. This strikes for the rights that have been stripped from women in this country are making a festival of patriarchal terror possible. And that's Bourne does. And Project 2025 is coming unless you stop it peacefully and help someone like Beth Bourne, as she shrieks these dehumanizing vitriol articles. We need to recognize that it's a cry for help and such, or we will all need help. We need to tell editors no. And
to send this message, press pound or hang up. To play it, 3. To re-record it. Your message has been sent. If you would like to try an extension, you may do so now. Goodbye.
Goodbye. And so, just want to make it clear that brown shirts are not welcome to inject the cancer of their intolerance into our lives. Just like we're going to protect the separation of church and state, we are going to take care of the boundaries that make sure that women and children, men, that everybody are safe and have consent and human rights. And as far as I can tell, we have a brown shirt on our hands. And they're a human being. They deserve to be treated with dignity, but they do not deserve the sanction and support of a university to continue to espouse that, or to continue, frankly, to be in that position as someone who is part of removing human rights from girls and entrenching deadly, enslaving patriarchal terrorism across America. That this person comes to light across Instagram for me today because of a trans-genocide related scapegoating public attack is, I mean, there's a lot going on there, and I hope she gets help, and I hope that you fire her. I hope that she gets help indeed, and really for having hired her and kept her there as essentially a Nazi empowered by your university. It's abominable. It is absolutely abominable. And for that failure on your part, you should set up this sad sack of a human being with exceptional health care, because she's going to need it. She's infected with white supremacist, patriarchal terrorism. And she's getting it all over everybody else. And the answer is no. That's not acceptable. So I hope you deal with her accordingly. I hope she gets help, but not help to make Project 2025 a reality. It's time for the adults to have the room again. Marjorie Taylor Greene and the rest of the lynch mob brain syndrome purveyors have have had the microphone of this abandoned Kmart for long enough. It's time, it's time to sort out those people who are willing to deal with building a space of common language where we can talk about our differences and find safe ways to use reproach, so that this kind of essentially work to provoke a civil war, which is exactly what Beth was doing in the video. Working to provoke bigoted, deadly violence. That's what we're dealing with here. That's what Charlie Kirk proposes. That's what Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, propose. And so we need to say no. No Charlie Kirk, no Matt Walsh, no Candace Owens, no Marjorie, no Stephen Miller. No one talks to human beings like that, and no one talks to Americans like that. No. No. We expect you to deal forthrightly for this person's health care. And they are a human being, but they're not treating other people like that. So it's time for UC Davis to deal with this correctly and to vilify the actions that should be vilified. It's not all right. It's not all right to target any members of our community. And if we have concerns with one another, there are ways to dialogue. There are ways to say things that are even upsetting to one another. And maybe those of us who are trying as hard as we can to fuck one another's feelings should be noticed for that, because there is a bandwidth of our feelings that someone who's yelling fuck your feelings at someone else is clearly aware of and values for themselves enough to know that it hurts or feels good when I do this or that. We're all part of one human fabric. And people working to terrorize or working to juke moments where we could be finding a way to balance our scales and say, I want to make sure that a pound is a pound for both of us. And we need to note that. We shouldn't have to turn off mics. We have to turn off mics because the normalizing, ongoing diarrhea of, well, you're smart to listen to me, so I'll keep talking, of someone who attacked our country and hasn't explained why. It's time to wake up, to engage peacefully. And if we figure out that we can't be heard the way we're being heard peacefully, then we need to peacefully find other ways to be heard peacefully, but heard. And say no. Because when someone asks any questions and we say, yes, actually, it sounds like you don't care about our boundaries. You are going to leave when it's time for you to go, right? If we say, you're done, you'll say, all right, I'm out. You'll leave when we say so, right? I'll tell you at the time, I'll keep you in suspense. That's when the trap door opens, because you don't do that. You don't threaten us. But we had somehow already submitted enough to not figure out how to pull the trap door that says, he just made a promise he wants to keep. But he did began a trajectory in 2015 or 2016 of fomenting an idea of, I'll keep you in suspense. I'll tell you at the time, it's all going to be rigged. And that fog, and a sense of it being overwhelming, and a sense that we can't participate, or a sense that maybe it's smart to lie, or maybe it's okay to shout violent, hateful things and to make someone afraid for their life. Maybe it's okay to go after over half the population by removing basic human and civil rights of women. Maybe it's okay to do this. Maybe it's okay. And that shows we're dealing with people who, like Hitler, will grab an area, say a crotch, or another area that has private parts that are vulnerable and soft and compromising and apparently compromised, and will say, I won't take any more, but I'm staying here as long as I want. It's mine now. I wasn't wrong to grab it. If I let go, I'll be back. This is just the start. Shh. If we don't recognize that someone letting and shrugging off a sexual assault confession as locker room talk is telling us he can do it, if we shrug off someone pointing into the lens of a camera and saying, I could shoot you in the street and not lose any of you, is threatening us, if we can't see he didn't not know, he knew millions of us would be looking into that view, and that his finger would align perfectly with the center between our eyes. As he said, I could shoot someone in the street and not lose any voters. It's amazing. Because he has normalized degradation. And the normalizing of degradation is what lynch mob brain syndrome is all about. Weaponizing white suspicion, white, fire, terrorist suspicion, as Beth Bourne seems to be wont to do. I think we need to say something when we see something on this level, of this magnitude, and we are experiencing massive distortions in the field of reality. So it's all the more important. It's all the more important that we figure out just the basics of what's going on. Like, what is it safe to say? Are we allowed to talk about life and kindness and being good people with our children? And if that's a question that makes any sense to anyone as to why I would ask that, then we are not in a space that is dystopic. We are a dystopia. Because we shouldn't be asking these questions without already being in the midst of repair. It shows giving up and submitting. And that's why we need to be aware and look brown shirts in the eye and say, no, Beth Bourne. No, you don't, though. Go back and find your boundaries and consult a therapist. And this behavior will never be tolerated again. It wasn't tolerated now, but I was kind. Go get help to stop this. That's the bandwidth. That sometimes we need to have a boundary and that reproach is okay. Boundaries are things we make with people we are okay with having in our lives, or recognize we at least need to make some relationship with so that we're not harming one another. We don't all need to be friends, but it's not okay to stoke hatred against groups of one another. And that's what it looks like Beth Bourne is comfortably ensconced in protection of. So I hope that changes. I hope that she gets help, because the things that shouldn't be supportable shouldn't be supported, especially at a time when Project 2025 and Stephen Miller have declared they are coming to enact posse comitatus and a dictatorship. We will see massive opening harm if we don't take seriously that those people willing to do what Marjorie Taylor Greene and Alex Jones and Donald Trump and others like them are doing, we're dealing with very, very, very dangerous, narcissistic, dark triad predators. And again, this is the kind of thing we need to see as a cry for help, and realize that if we don't give boundaries and say no, shushaby, Donald, then we are enabling behavior that it's not okay to enable in one another as a part of human family. And so to those who would say that fuck your feelings is a good bandwidth, I would say fuck your fleecing, or indeed cuff your fleecing, Donald. And let's do remember, sweet lovelies, all of you kind human beings, that, what's up, yo? Our top story remains Donald Trump, Roger Stone, and Stephen Miller remain at large. That's right, Donald Trump, Roger Stone, and Stephen Miller all remain at large. That top story again, well, second top story. Once again, Donald Trump, Roger Stone, and Stephen Miller currently remain at large. And please act accordingly, knowing that we are not safe until predators who tell us they can hurt us and plan abductions and put kids in cages and threaten to come back for more and lie to do it might meet accountability in a world where we recognize we don't deserve to be degraded, where we realize we're strong enough to deal with all of the crimes and mistakes and horrors of the past, and it doesn't stop any of us from moving forward together. We can process our American apartheid. The real tragedy would be to keep lying to ourselves that this isn't something we can take on together as human family in this land. Only cowards tried to cover up the terroristic history of white supremacist patriarchal terror, and only cowards tried to profit from it. Only cowards, criminals, and villains would try to cover up that crime, or say it wasn't so bad, or continue to profit or open it up further. And so Ron DeSantis and Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Sarah Huckabee Sanders and people who would foist a Nazi dictatorship upon us and foist a Handmaid's Tale where sex has deadly consequences or else, and a world in which already tens of thousands of new slaves to rapists are being minted by design, and infant mortality rates are climbing by design, and patriarchal terrorism and fear that halts progress in the lives of women erupts around us because of of Stephen Miller, and villainly like that of wanton attempted assassin Roger Stone, and a convicted rapist, spy, and plotter and leader of a coup that spilled shit and blood, who says he did nothing wrong and sang with his co-conspirators in jail. Didn't say, I'm sorry I misled you. You know what, I was wrong. I thought that no proof of ubiquitous fraud meant it was really ubiquitous and invisible, and it was just that good, and it was proof, and sorry, I fucked up, guys. Sorry, you hurt people because I lied, essentially. But he didn't do that. He went there and he recorded an anthem with traitors. And just like Stephen Miller and Project 2025 confessed, like, you remove the conspiracy theory from it a bit if you print a confession, or if you say, I'm going to Babe Ruth it and tell you I'm going to grab her crotch in 5 minutes. Let me start walking across the room. That maybe you're doing that because you're confident you have already coaxed submission or the brink of it. So the question is, are we at the brink of realizing we've already submitted and waking up? Are we at the brink of realizing it's too late? Or that it could be too late to stop a Nazi dictatorship under Trump peacefully, unless we come together now and in ways that are legible and public and safe and demonstrate the value of reproach, and even an angry reproach, doing it safely for the good and health of this union and this republic. Isn't it time that we find our voice to say, we deserve to live in peace? Isn't it time to find our voice to say there should be one peace, and it should be available to everyone? Isn't it time to get ridiculous people who would let us cook and lose the ability to breathe correctly, while, you know what, dealing with and solving, ameliorating climate collapse would be really, really, really good for business? And any company that came up with a technology or put in some huge investment that restores the health of a river basin or something, I mean, these are things that are doable. And the blueprint, apparently, for a lot of these people is supposed to be the majesty of God's creation. Well, let's lean into it. Let's foster the natural world and let it tell us how we continue to build, and the stuff we don't build with anymore because it's killing us or killing the habitat that is our habitat. All of it is about the idea that we believe it's even possible to say no when someone brings violence or the threat of violence. And there is a spectrum of terrorism. And the two tools of terrorism are violence and intimidation. And we saw a violent form of intimidation, a clearly vitriolic, intimidating crisis potentially, but potentially hateful display. It's serious, it's not something to sweep under the rug, and the revelation that someone from Moms for Liberty is actually working in this kind of position anyway is amazing. It's ridiculous on its face, but she needs help, and I hope she gets that. And we need help, and it should be more common for us to find ways to break through, to speak so that we're heard, speak to one another, or say no. If no one will say no, and we realize there's just been an ability of redress that's kind of been atrophied or removed, it's on us to figure out. We have to figure out how to be heard peacefully. It can be shutting down a freeway, but there are so many other ways, and why wouldn't we choose ways that feel like a win? Like, it can shut down an artery of the city and people feel it, but what if we did actions that didn't fuck up anybody's day and made the day better, and focused attention and the ability to have even reproach, but to leave having heard one another, embrace one another's language enough to know that we're talking about the same thing, even if we don't agree about it, but that we're willing to have a conversation together. It's a union, and we have to fight for the unification. We have to do the work, like the love work and the homework and the personal homework, because the world keeps moving. We're in this together. And if I were screaming obscenities, trying to harm someone, or to make others feel that a group of people were worth demonization and harm, then it would be good for somebody to come and say, hey, you gotta calm down, let's take a break, and hopefully help me kindly calm down on my own, but at least let them be safe. We are a union. So I care that this person feels safe. You know, whether or not there was animosity to provoke something, or she was triggered with really no voluntary effort. In either case, what came out was terroristic. And we need to help one another by having boundaries to give one another a way out of that, of healing. But boundaries are important, and I really am going to be disappointed and think very different things about UC Davis if this is the kind of thing that is made space for. If there's room for this kind of behavior on someone's part and then to remain. Like, well, they have different ideas. Intolerance, I think intolerance is the one thing we maybe can't tolerate. Or at least, what would it look like to unpack and have conversation about this? But again, she is essentially part of a 50-year campaign to remove family planning and medical rights from women. That is a long act of patriarchal terrorism. And frankly, UC Davis and anybody who employs or supports or lets people like this have power is part of that. People who are waging that kind of thing should not have influence. That's support of that in the world. At least it's something that should be a topic of conversation. Like if she just demanded to wear swastika dresses all the time, we would want to have a talk about that. And that's where we're at. Project 2025 has said it's coming. It has outlined its threat of patriarchal terrorism and racist, transphobic, homophobic, divergence-phobic patriarchal terrorism and white supremacist terror. It's time to wake out of the it's not a normal election at all. It's just an entirely different world. And people going through the rhythm, media that is allowing us to go through any kind of rhythm of a horse race about this, rather than understanding that this is a gaping maw with teeth that will digest us. That we have an opportunity to stop this kind of thing. And I bring it to that level because this is exactly this terroristic brownshirting, like that of this hopefully soon-to-be ex-employee of UC Davis. This is how Kristallnacht opens up. This is who does it. And we need to see these things as cries for help, or the society around, people like myself and others, should see it as a cry for help if UC Davis doesn't evolve in your care for this person in their state of unwellness, and your care for your institution and all of your students in the greater community by excising bandwidths of hatred. Maybe she comes back. But deprogramming is a thing. And protecting human family is a thing. Anyway, from the mystery font, it's thoughts about what our hearts won't abandon. What will your heart not abandon? We shouldn't abandon Beth Bourne, but we shouldn't let her stay in power if she is infected by the cancer of Nazi patriarchal terrorism that has her stripping rights from women and children, and has her scapegoating in a manner that is literally deadly, and which is intended to be deadly. UC Davis has no idea of what she plans, except that they have just seen a gun in the first act of her Seagull. But I would expect this isn't the first act. I would expect that she's been a problem, if this is who she is. Please help her by getting her the psychiatric, therapeutic help that she needs, and help us by showing that there are boundaries, that in 2024 and in 2025 we don't accept brown shirt behavior, because we don't want brown shirt paradise. We want brown shirts finding therapy and self-regulation and human family that's safe and sustainable so our union can continue. We have a lot of stuff to process, and people who feel grievance aren't wrong to feel it, but it may be pointed at the wrong people. We shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves when it's really clear, if we allow ourselves to calm down, if we get a little bit of distance from those who would try to stoke us, like Beth Bourne, trying to stoke us into fear and terror and hurting each other, which is exactly that bandwidth. And I would allege exactly what she was trying to do. We need to recognize that, because lynch mob brain syndrome, the stoking of that, the disassembly of executive function, the intentional attempt to really demonstrate loss of executive function. How much of that is put on or performative and becomes the fiery mess that is on the video, how much of it is strategic. It eventually doesn't matter, because in either case it's dangerous. But I would imagine that there's some amount of sentience, some amount of awareness about exactly the kind and the specialization of the tactics that she uses to make people feel afraid and shamed and like they are the villain, like they're in trouble, and to do things that would cause harm to come to them. And certainly to make other people have a situation where they would come upon someone scolding another person, just all the basic stuff about why what's terrible about screaming at someone among other people. But in this case, meant to sow harm. This wasn't just about them. So her having different views, if they venture out as they have here, that was her arm hitting somebody else. Talking like that, with that tone and intent, is her hitting somebody else. You're trying to cause an effect that is outsized and beyond. And I hope that it's dealt with appropriately, because she will do worse if she's not made to do better. Anyway, from the mystery font, 42, it is Tuesday. And how do you do? I hope you're well. And there is a fog of hokum. It's true. When normalized hokum is that in which we're soaking, MTG, Madge would love us to soak in it. Madge wants us to soak in it. And just, I think, lose track of the massive distortions of reality that are all around us. To let someone recharacterize something as a raid and eventually just submit. Say, okay, fine, FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago, the Mar-a-Lago raid. It wasn't a raid. I've heard at least one FBI agent saying, you know, it was pretty straight up service of a warrant. A raid is a very different thing. It probably wasn't fun for him, but, you know, this was a process. And why would we accept a truly fallacious, like a falsehood, as being how we talk about something like that? It's not as crazy as, you know, I think we still all know that Obama's crowd was much bigger than Trump's inauguration crowd. Not that it matters, but somehow that didn't get swallowed up. But what did was that they worked to coerce a massive lie that there was some falsehood about that, and that maybe his crowd was bigger, and no, they weren't lying, it was alternative facts. But essentially, the first statement from that White House through the press corps, through their press secretary, was, you say Donald Trump's a liar. Well, look what you did. I scheduled an early first press conference to tell you terrible, lying people. This was the biggest press conference, the biggest inauguration crowd in person and around the world. Having already just said that nobody had numbers, and stormed out, claiming that there was proof, and the photographs were faked, and all this stuff. And Kellyanne Conway was telling us the next day, well, he just offered alternative facts. Which means to say, well, yes, he did say that the sky, which was blue, was black. He said the sky was black, but that's an alternative fact. He said the sky was black. Yep, it's this was one massive rupture in fact. But it was coercion to swallow that. To swallow something like, oh yeah, Mar-a-Lago raid, when it wasn't a raid. A warrant obtained after months and months and months of felonious holding of the most sensitive documents in the world. It's so far beyond outrageous. But this Three Stooge syndrome of all of the diseases of the Montgomery Burns that is Donald Trump, it allows any one of these things to be no big deal, because that's the thing, is Donald Trump is made of and symbiotic with and generating the swamp. He has always been part of corruption and of theft from poor people and from honest business people. He has always been an engine of grift and theft and racist patriarchal terror. And why would you accept something that should be unacceptable, or accept something that's obviously a lie, and not just say, hey, wait, it's no big deal, you're not a bad person, but I mean, there's light. It's definitely not black, and it looks blue to me. but we can see each other. What am I missing? The sky's not black, I'm sorry. Can we level with each other here? Because my level doesn't say a pound of flour, it says the sky's not black. Does yours say the sky is black? Really? That kind of rupture of good faith communication is terroristic, because it's not a game. We're dealing with government. We're dealing with how government adheres to reality and how that interacts with whether or not there will be press conferences at all, or if there's an issue. I wonder if the president would not tell us if something was dangerous, and then maybe if we needed to have press conferences, he'd kind of sabotage them. We would want to know about that kind of stuff. And so, it's important to know why would Donald Trump want us to accept a falsehood? Why would Beth Bourne want us to accept the falsehood that it's okay to talk to someone in the way that she did? Why would we just kind of sit down and accept that as being acceptable? Or in good faith? The idea is to normalize and coerce acceptance of something. To normalize and coerce acceptance of, well, suspicious white ladies will yell and they're in charge, and they say who gets hurt. Or normalization of, well, he said his was the biggest crowd, I don't want to argue about it, I want to go home. Like, at some point we get so overwhelmed and fatigued and sick of the lies, whether we are being lied to by someone we love or despise, or somewhere in between. If we realize or feel we cannot be heard, or not be heard if we refute successfully something that's important and dependent upon, or needs to be dependable, we're dealing with dangerous structures that are trying to be all-powerful and criminal and violent. And so, what is the point of a Brownshirt saying, I get to do this at you though? Or Donald Trump saying, I get to come and Project 2025 is going to come and lock you down and you're never going to know again though? That in fact, we get to recognize that as someone who is promising an attack. And we get to take off our weird-ass hokum goggles and have the courage to recognize a Brownshirt. That's Stephen Miller, M. And Brownshirts also like Charlie Kirk, or Matt Walsh, or Steven Crowder, or Alex Jones, or Tucker Carlson, or Ricky Lake. That these Brownshirts mean murder, deadly business. It's time to understand that people who really love humanity do have to wake up to protect human family right now. Because those who would attack wokeness and attack DEI are attacking the mission of Christ. They're attacking the mission of human prophets for millennia who have said in different ways, let's treat each other like we'd be treated. Let's treat each other like a neighbor. Love thy neighbor as you love yourself. They are shitting in the face of that admonition of Christ and saying that that person across the border isn't human, or that person who can't afford a place to live tonight and nobody wants to take them in is a criminal for this situation. We need to recall what human family is. I think sometimes if we close our eyes or something, we can see it or feel it. We can see it inside, like things that mean stuff. And we might not agree that they mean the same thing, but sometimes at least they glow with meaning for everybody. So symbols some of us love and some of us hate, or a lot of us feel some way about. We may not all feel the same way, but we all feel something potent. And so there's something that we can talk about. And a union and a safe place that is worth fighting for the safety of doesn't need to be torn up when people lose track of what to say. We have the technology to recover the skills of reproach and really to find those among us who are willing and passionate to do that hard work. It's not easy. And really, it's on us to not elect people who are there essentially to preempt and terrorize and filibuster from any progress. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a terrorist. She is working to preempt and strike fear and abject horror through defiling, degrading, and dehumanizing people. And we should send people with a different goal there, because it's not a goal that has anything to do with government. It's definitely a goal that has to do with attacking and disabling government. And, agents of the Confederacy, it makes sense that they would do that, but we can't accept that. We need people who are there to build things that are positive for everyone. So, when it comes to Beth, Bourne, waging the yes, I get to terrorize people and dehumanize and degrade and try to coax terrorist mob, when she says, I get to coax a lynching of you because you're the way you are. If you dressed differently, we wouldn't have known, but you're the way you are, and if you're that shape, the world's going to be a very difficult place for you. If we see that that's a voice of murderous coercion and apply help there, that's good. And if we see that a voice like Donald Trump and Project 2025 saying we're going to come there and be a dictator for a day, and then it's all no problem. We need to see that we are being brown-shirted and told as if dominated and submitted to that domination. We are being told by Daddy that Daddy's Daddy and Daddy's coming home and Daddy's Maddie. And we know who Daddy's Maddie at, and don't make Daddy maddier. It's super disgusting and incredibly dark and criminal. Let's put a point on it. Anyone working to sustain or cloak the bloody, horrific criminal pageantry of white supremacist patriarchal terrorism is a criminal and potentially a real predator, maybe personally and violently. But that is support of something that is abject crime and kind of a Jeffrey Dahmer fantasy. I hope that we recognize that wanting to do that to any group or accepting doing that as was done by the creation of whiteness, that it's a wrong, and it's a wrong that we leave behind not by erasing its existence, but by processing and learning that we fucking did that and put people, part of our human family, put a lot of our human family through that, and we all went through it. Our ancestry makes up us, the product of folks who did that to each other. And we just are not, we're not so cowardly that we have to hide. We can look into the glow and we can see something and know what's coming, or start to make up some sort of formulation. We can figure things out. So why try to coerce somebody to accept the falsehood that dehumanization and threat is acceptable? Why coerce someone to believe the lie that the larger crowd was the smaller crowd? Why would someone want to force people to accept a lie without protest?
I made a speech. I looked out. The field was, it looked like 1.5 million people. They showed a field where there were practically nobody standing there.
The new White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, gave his first press briefing. He was also highly critical of some media organisations of the way he felt they had misrepresented the number of people who'd attended Friday's inauguration ceremony.
No one had numbers because the National Park Service, which controls the National Mall, does not put any out. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
It does not excuse, and you did not answer the question.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did not answer the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that.
Largest ever.
It's worth noting tyrant's groom for submission. Let's be aware that they have told us this ship of white fire is coming to take over, and that we can do something to apprehend Project 2025. We can do something to stop this.
Any ache, everything we have took, everything we can take. Six the feet of separation. Six the fear of separation.
The thing is,
we can ease any ache, everything we have took, everything we can take.
Watch.
Six the feet of separation.
He broke the watch. He asked for the watch. And we said, you're going to give it back when we ask for it back, right? He's like, I'll tell you then. I'll keep you in suspense about that. But just like when he called our neighbors rapists, he doesn't have any twitch of shame, and so we're like not seeing any part of a fiber in him that is concerned when people are like, what? He's like, uh-huh, because it just is not there, or it's been killed, or it's hostage somewhere. Whatever part of him would allow him that empathy. So who are we dealing with? I think it is a dark triad predator we're dealing with. You don't, if you want to win an election on good terms, especially if you're confident in yourself, you just put forth all your good qualities. You just share ideas, You just try to knock it out of the park. But all kinds of effort was spent long before the 2016 and 2020 election, and again now. Work done as an investment of what Donald Trump wanted to build, which was not a confident victory, but a ruin of torn confidence in democracy.
You have been warning at rallies recently that this election is rigged and that Hillary Clinton is in the process of trying to steal it from you. Your running mate, Governor Pence, pledged on Sunday that he and you, his words, will absolutely accept the result of this election. Today, your daughter Ivanka said the same thing. I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it. I think they're going to see through it. We'll find out on November 8th, but I think they're going to see through it.
But, sir, there's
if you look, excuse me, Chris, if you look at your voter rolls, you will see millions of people that are registered to vote. Millions. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from Pew Report and other places. Millions of people that are registered to vote that shouldn't be registered to vote. So let me just give you one other thing. So I talk about the corrupt media. I talk about the millions of people. Tell you one other thing. She shouldn't be allowed to run. She's guilty of a very, very serious crime. She should not be allowed to run. And just in that respect, I say it's rigged, because she should never, Chris, she should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
But, sir, there is a tradition in this country. In fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner. Not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
And that is batshit insane and a threat, a promise, and frankly just an attack. That is an assertion that he should get to talk like that, and an assertion that it's okay for anyone to tell the United States, oh yeah, the rules are different for me. This deal isn't worth it for me unless I can't treat this patient unless I have the rights to murder them and disassemble their body for my pleasure. If I just get a bad whim, like a really bad whim, and do something bad to them. If I can't put them back together again, then I'm not going to be in trouble, right? This is insane. And at this point, there was already enough submission around him a sense of inertia and a normalizing of doing unthinkable things, such that it was not recognized that this was an unthinkable thing that was like literally tentpole of democracy. He's not pooping on the drapes and trying to claim it was the dog. He's just released poison gas, and that's why he put on a gas mask. He just told us he will suspend democracy. He just told us, I will interfere. I would say we should interfere with her election if she's walking in here with crimes. which, by the way, dwarf in comparison to what he's done, of course. No one has ever faced anything like he has because no one has ever done horrendous crimes like this and then tried to walk into an election with them. That is election interference. That is using your own problems as a battering ram and claiming you're doing it for the country. He's here to evade prosecution, and he's here for more power. That's it. He's here to finish his coup. I don't know what else there would be to say or do other than just to say, if you cheat the US once, shame on you, and there is no part two. He pooped in the soup, and then he said it was bad that somebody put poop in the soup, but he didn't, he didn't mean to do it. And, not sure how that got in there, but, he wouldn't do that. But boy, if he did poop in the soup, we'd like it. Some people say that, God, they would eat that soup, and they would, some people, I don't know, some people, they just feel like he's really special, but maybe a special Trump soup is what the group needs for the troops, But anyway, I wouldn't do that. But, I'm going to go and sing with the imprisoned, the saboteurs who poisoned that soup with feces. And I thought I'd talk to them and say, I'm not sure. I guess I said something that made you feel like you should poop in the soup, or, I guess somehow you got a hold of my poop somehow, and I'm not sure how you did that. I tried to cover all my poop with important papers, but somehow you got some of my poop into the soup, and instead of telling them, please don't do that again. But I see you thought you were fighting for something, but I wish you all the best, and be brave, and you'll get through this time. Have courage, seek the Lord, seek the light, whatever. No, he went there and sang a song with them about how the soup tasted of his shit, and that was a delight. And that under the flag, they would make another shit soup on another night. He sang with violent traitors against our country. He sang with violent traitors against our country in unity with them. And instead of being honest that he had lied about finding any fraud, that he had lied about knowing it was rigged, that he had lied that no one had shown him any evidence. Instead of telling them the truth and saying, look guys, it's come to light, I'm going to try to get him in 2024, but looks like, he won that one fair and square, as much as that sucks, and as much as it sucks that I didn't know that at the time, or that I didn't tell you. But that kind of metal is nowhere in this man. He is not made of that kind of metal. He wouldn't apologize. He wouldn't admit fault. He wouldn't admit sowing a coup. But just like you tell someone that your crowd is larger when it's smaller to make them accept it and not say, hey, wait, why are you? You tell people with a democratic country and long-standing that is a pillar of democracy on the earth, oh, I'll keep you in suspense about following orderly, power, and maybe I'll just hang on to power. That's what he did. He threatened coup in this debate. That's what he just did. That's what the last minute is about.
That at the end
But millions, this isn't coming from me. This.
Sir,
If you look, excuse me, Chris, if you look at your voter rolls, you will see millions of people that are registered to vote. Millions. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from Pew Report and other places. Millions of people that are registered to vote that shouldn't be registered to vote. So
He buried it by spacing it between a couple of statements, or, you know, he spaced it out with some anecdotal blather about, I say this and I talk about this, but he essentially, without that spacer, said, I'll tell you at the time. I'll tell you it at the time. I'll tell you about it at the time. I'm not going to tell you now. I'll tell you at the time. And after the spacer says, I'll tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense. I'll tell you at the time. I'll tell you at the time. I'll tell you at the time. I don't know. I'll tell you at the time. I'll tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense. This was a negotiation. And he is distorting reality and acting as if we're lucky to be in the room with him and negotiating about the terms of office. That's not what was happening, but he is a good con artist. And he makes the conversation about what he wants the conversation to be about to some degree, unless he's held to account. Unless that colonization of reality is halted, because he just threatened us in this video. It happens here.
let me just give you one other thing. So I talk about the corrupt media. I talk about the millions of people. If you look, excuse me, Chris, it's so amazing.
That you will absolutely accept the result of this election.
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it. I think they're going to see through it. We'll find out on November 8th, but I think they're going to see through it.
But, sir, there's
if you look, excuse me, Chris, if you look at your voter rolls, you will see millions of people that are registered to vote. Millions. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from Pew Report and other places. Millions of people that are registered to vote that shouldn't be registered to vote. So let me just give you one other thing. So I talk about the corrupt media. I talk about the millions of people. Tell you one other thing. She shouldn't be allowed to run. She's guilty of a very, very serious crime. She should not be allowed to run. And just in that respect, I say it's rigged, because she should never, Chris, she should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
But, sir, there is a tradition in this country. In fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner, not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris.
That was a threat. That was simply a statement of his intent and what he would do. That he would only honor the election if he won. And this is the same person. And in fact, not only has he said he did nothing on January 6th, which is categorically false and psychopathic, He said he's done nothing wrong at all. And threatening or negotiating that, in fact, he doesn't have to go through an election having promised that, of course, I'll go with whatever the vote says. Of course. We do that in America. Of course, if I'm elected and then I'm in the subsequent election I'm not elected, then I will leave power peacefully. Of course. I believe people will want to vote for me a second time. But that's not what he said. He very specifically says, I'll tell you at the time. I'll tell you at the time. I'm not looking at it now. I'll tell you at the time. I'll tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense. If someone's coming up to your apartment and you haven't had them over before and you're like, I gotta get up early. Let's just hang out for an hour, maybe have some tea and watch a movie. I gotta make it an early night. You'll leave maybe 10:30. If they say I'll keep you in suspense, you probably don't want to let them come up. Or at least you have some boundaries talking to do. Are you joking, or do you... I was going to let you come up for a little bit, but let's just do this another time. It's not a funny joke, really. I'll keep you in suspense. And it wasn't a joke. It was exact intent. That sometimes people tell you what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, but it is so batshit that we look for the other semblances of understanding around us in a conversation and say, okay, well that's terrifying, but and I don't know why he would say that, but what's sad is that neither Hillary Clinton nor Chris Matthews nor Secret Service or anyone else there thought to say, okay, let's suspend the debate, actually. You've done it, Mr. President. You have suspended the debate. You are no longer a candidate for president. Because no one threatens to suspend democracy. You don't get to this level and then do that and say that and have us say, golly, okay. At this level, this is not the NFL, this is the USA. You don't come here and tell us oh yeah, I don't do it that way. I'll stick around if I feel like I'm, if I realize I'm king, then that's what I'm doing. That's what he told us. I'll tell you at the time. It wasn't a joke. It was a statement. I'll tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
And that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that, because that
She should have said, you either are about to tell us that's not your final answer, or you have just made the largest mistake of your life. And this is the end of your campaign. We're suspending the debate, in fact, Donald. You just said the bad magic words. No one threatens to suspend democracy. Sir. And give him a couple of minutes to leave the stage. And let him know that in a couple of minutes, gather his papers and walk off calmly. But in a couple of minutes, the Secret Service will be there to help him leave, if he's not gone. That's what you do when someone says, well, I'm going to do what I want when it comes to basic tenets of democracy, when it comes to, will I treat people as people, when it comes to, will I lie that I'm here for everyone and then allow the rupture and stripping of rights from half of the population. I'll tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
That at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner, not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
So I think the response just needs to be, we're not going to be held in suspense in a land of, oh, now it's okay to say that to people. Okay, I won't say anything. I'm glad that the horrendous behavior of Miss Bourne was recorded. Hope she gets help. And I hope that UC Davis gets help for what may be a cultural problem. Because brown shirt behavior is totally unacceptable. Mr. Rogers taught us DEI. Mr. Rogers taught us wokeness. Mr. Rogers taught us that we all have value and that in our difference and diversity is value. And Beth Bourne is infected with intolerance that threatens her safety and that of those around her. So let's hear these kinds of hateful shrieks as a cry for help and help her and help our communities. And let's remember if you see something, say something. Cheers.
you're the reality.